The three C's of life: choices, chances, changes. You must make a choice to take a chance to change your life. At MindSkills, we have made that choice to stay in the game, taken a chance to explore the virtual world, and have accepted the change which is the new normal way of life. Hello everyone, I'm Kavita Mehra, Managing Director and key founder with MindSkills. I come with more than 45 years of experience and 25 years expertise in the training arena. The lockdown was trying times for all. It gave us a lot of time to introspect. We quickly adapted to changes with time, and we are here to remodel our structure of work and restore our style of work from platform of learning with newer and relevant offerings post-pandemic. At this crucial time, to stay engaged and boost morale, we introduced the Learning Cafe series to grow, ideate, connect, and learn. And we had eminent speakers, directors, and CEOs from various diverse industries like manufacturing, auto industry, hospitality, retail, banking and financial services, IT, and healthcare. They shared insights which were phenomenal. They taught us how to cope with the pandemic and introduced us to the new normal way of life. I hope all of you enjoyed the leadership sessions at MindSkills like my team and I did. Thank you, stay safe, and good luck to the new way of life.
Now, the example I want to give is of Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau, if you see his uh, daily conferences with the Canadian public and his press conferences on the coronavirus, I think it's a classic case in leadership management, where he is updating the entire country at a defined time on a daily basis. He's leaving no room for doubts. He's telling them exactly what progress they're making, what's being done on healthcare, what's being done on to revive the economy, and so on and so forth. He is accessible. He is visible. He is talking to his people. So if you're a leader during a crisis, do not hide. Communicate with your team every day. But when you communicate, have something meaningful to say. Don't say, oh, how's your wife, how's your son, etc. They'll see you out on that. It appears fake. Have something meaningful to say. Talk to them every day. Also remember, everything does not need to be responded to. You don't need to tell everything to everyone, and also you don't need to respond to everything. My father always says, when it is not necessary to respond, it is necessary to not respond. When it is not necessary to respond, it is necessary to not respond. And the master of this was Narasimha Rao. I mean, people used to say he's the master of inaction, but frankly, history proves that he led a minority government for 5 years. Or Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte was famous for saying that time handles 90% of my problems and I handle the balance 10%. So he says, I used to come to my table and I'd see a whole lot of papers. I would look at the papers and I'd walk away from my table. I would come back 1 week later and 90% of the papers were not there anymore because time or someone else in my team had handled it. So I would handle the balance 10% that still were not handled by anyone else. So accessibility, the second one. The third one is empathy. You need to think about your team, not about yourself. You need to put their health and safety and well-being first. Always. Lives over livelihood. Our Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, "Jaan hai to jahan hai." Now you can argue and say, "Ke ab to unko bolna chahiye jaan bhi aur jahan bhi." But frankly, today Vikram Chandra, my friend in NDTV, put out a tweet saying that it seems to me that India has sacrificed their economy to save lives, whereas America has sacrificed lives to save their economy. And he says it's very funny because we were always told that the price of a life in India is very cheap and the price of a life in America is very expensive, but they seem to have done the opposite. Now, I'm not getting into who was right or wrong. I think only time will tell. But empathy is very, very important. People are struggling. As a consultant today, I've been working out of home for the last 1.5 years. I also had an office at WeWork for about 6 months. So I know what one goes through. People are struggling with mental health issues. People are struggling with the physical challenges of working out of home, internet connectivity, printouts. I mean, stationery shops are shut, right? My daughter studies in America. She's back in India. The rest of the semester has moved online. And we need printouts and stuff, and the stationery shops are shut, and our printers are empty of paper. So, People are struggling with all sorts of challenges. In Bangalore, food and grocery is not available so easily. Show empathy for that, because this is a very new situation for most of these people. And I will give you an example of empathy. If you recall Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister, in the aftermath of the Christchurch shootings last year, she received worldwide praise for her handling of the crisis. She said, I will not give a name to that terrorist. He will not be referred by name so that he is never remembered. He is forgotten. Uh, he will not be given any sort of importance in the media. The way she prayed with the Muslims, the way she's expressed solidarity with the victims, the way she went around, thanking the firefighter, thanking the first response teams. She won worldwide praise as one of the most empathetic leaders in the world, and she has continued doing that with the coronavirus situation, even though New Zealand is hardly affected. So empathy, the next one. The fourth one, and when we grow old and we have white hair, we've seen it. My submission is, this too shall pass. If you were to ask me for a mantra for my life, this too shall pass. ये भी निकल जाएगा, ये वक्त भी निकल जाएगा. Patience and optimism. We need to demonstrate patience and optimism, because very often you're dealing with people who are younger than you, who may not have that kind of patience, whose lives are, have up and downs, emotional highs, and so on and so forth. You need to smoothen that. You need to demonstrate patience and optimism. And as far as optimism is concerned, Indians are amongst the most optimistic people in the world, because it is part of the way we are brought up, that tomorrow will be better than today. Today is better than yesterday. Kal ka din hum aaj se bhala hoga. So we are forward-looking people. We are optimistic people. And it is the leader's job to continue to shine the ray of optimism as far as his or her team is concerned. The next one is resilience, because frankly, no one knows how long this lockdown will last. Will it be lifted in stages? Is my district in a hotspot? Will it be a limited opening of the economy? I have Aditya Birla Retail as a client, and we were discussing with their CEO earlier today. I was making a presentation, and for men's innerwear, for Van Heusen, they see no light at the end of the tunnel for another 3 or 4 months, because innerwear is not a priority product. So the malls are shut, the multiplexes are shut, their stores are shut. But during such time, they're doing training, they're doing meetings virtually every day. They're rolling out e-learning platforms, etc. They're tightening their processes and systems. So resilience is very, very important. Look at World War II. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a paraplegic. He was paralyzed. He couldn't walk. He used to drive around in a wheelchair. It's a different matter. The journalists in America respected the fact that he was disabled or differently abled. They never printed any pictures of him sitting in a wheelchair during the war, because they believed it would give the wrong impression to American troops. So people didn't even know he was in a wheelchair. And it's only after the war was over was the first pictures of Roosevelt in a wheelchair published. So, the kind of resilience Roosevelt showed during the Second World War, or let's say Churchill's speech before the Battle of Britain, before the Germans started bombing London, and London was saved because their inhabitants all went inside the tubes. He said, we will fight them on the land, we will fight them in the sea, we will fight them in the air. And that came to typify the British bulldog spirit that London simply refused to give in. Resilience, closer home. How many of you recall Rahul Dravid and VVS Lakshman's test innings against Australia in 2000, which is where Lakshman scored 281 not out, and I think Rahul was run out for 180 odd. Lakshman's innings is rated the greatest test innings ever played by an Indian. And no one in his right mind believed that we could have saved that test, leave alone win that test. So I would urge all of you to read Lakshman's autobiography, where he's dedicated close to 30 pages only to that innings, and how he paced himself and how they played it ball by ball, over by over. So I think demonstrating resilience is very, very important. Integrity. Now, Fanish will remember, at Pepsi, we used to have a placard on our desks that said, integrity is not a 99% thing. It is a 100% thing. You have to demonstrate integrity 100% of the times, not 99%. I recently finished watching a series on Netflix called Designated Survivor, where Kiefer Sutherland plays President Tom Kirkman. And now he's a deeply flawed character. He's emotional. He shouts. He screams. He's a political novice. But at every point in time, his decisions are with 100% integrity. He's the most honest, straightforward, principled man, to the extent that he almost loses his presidency because of his principles. But that resonates a lot with me in terms of demonstrating integrity in thought, in action, in word, and in deed. So integrity is the next one. The next point I'd like to talk about is building trust. Put your hands on your heart and tell me, how many people do you trust in the world today? From sportsmen to business leaders to political leaders, there seems to be a trust deficit. Look at the conspiracy theories around us. China engineered this vaccine. Was it a genetically engineered vaccine, or was it a naturally formed vaccine? What's happening on oil prices today? In theory, oil prices are in the negative, but that doesn't mean if you buy oil, people will pay you money. And what's happening on oil? Is it as a result of the US-Russia trade pact on fracking? I mean, they've reduced production, they increase production, they manipulate prices. There's a trust deficit there. Or vaccines. What do I trust? A cure versus a vaccine? There's a trust in government. Do I believe the government is doing the best for me, or are they hiding some information? What about banks? The moratorium on EMIs and credit card outstandings is actually a whitewash, because they're still going to charge you interest. The point I'm trying to make, media, the role that media has played, and I think something like WhatsApp has really not covered themselves with glory during this coronavirus case. I mean, they've spread so much fake information. And if I were the person in charge of WhatsApp, I would be really worried the way my platform is being used. Media seems to have covered itself in not really in glory. So there is a trust deficit really across the economy, across politics, across business. I think needing to build trust is very, very important. And the singular story. So before I come to the story, I had a thought. In today's time, the Kirana stores have actually delivered better than modern trade stores. All of you would have experiences wherever you live. Kirana stores have been willing to go the extra mile. They are coming and delivering to your house. They're opening up for 3 or 4 hours, and they're taking orders on the phone, and you can send someone to pick up, as opposed to modern trade. Of course, modern trade has many other issues. Many of them are air conditioned. They have larger staff numbers. But I think Kirana stores have actually established a lot of trust during this time. I have friends and colleagues who are saying that, you know what, once this is over, I'm not going to go and buy from modern trade. I'm going to buy from the Kirana store, because when I needed the Kirana store, the store was there for me, whereas modern trade was not there for me. So building trust is very important. I think a great example of trust is, if you recall the IPL final 3 or 4 years ago, if I had told you, and we had a team when I was at UB, we had a team called the Royal Challengers Bangalore, and we had a player called Shane Watson, who was being hammered all over the park. He was not scoring runs. He'd injured his thighs and stuff. If I told you that next year, and we all thought his career is pretty much over. Now, if I told you that next year, not only will he play IPL, but he will play for a new franchise and score a century in the finals of the IPL and help his new franchise win the IPL, you would have laughed at me. But that's exactly what happened. He was not bought in the first round. He was not bought in the second round. I'm talking about 2 years ago, or was it 3 years ago, when he first played for the Chennai Super Kings. He was bought only in the third round. And in the finals, if you remember, in the first 11 balls, he didn't score a single run. And if you saw his captain was standing very calmly in the dressing room with his hands inside his pockets with no expression on his face. In the next 40 balls, Shane Watson scored 100 runs. And they won the championship that year. And in his post-match presentation, they asked Shane Watson, you played so well. He said, I'm just grateful to be playing cricket, because I'm just grateful that someone bought me. Now, what happened? Dhoni told him. I met MSD later on, and Fanish knows Dhoni as well from his Pepsi days. I met him, and he told me, he said, I just told Shane Watson that I have faith and trust in you. You've done it before. I know you can do it again. I believe in you. Can you imagine how powerful that feeling is for a player who's playing for his captain? So I think building trust is very, very important. The next one is emotional intelligence. I think having, people talk about EQ. You see, unfortunately today, leadership has become chest thumping, and it's all about patriotism and nationalism and beating my chest and saying we're the greatest. But frankly, the younger generation doesn't look at that. The younger generation wants you to show a human face. The younger generation wants emotional intelligence. And I referred to Jacinda Ardern a little earlier, the New Zealand Prime Minister. I think she's demonstrated enormous emotional intelligence. And frankly, I have to say that our Prime Minister, Modi 2.0, is very different from Modi 1.0. The kind of statesmanship, the kind of leadership that he is showing, or at least being advised to show, his public persona is very different from his first term. So, there's something to be said for that as well. I mean, the fact when he hugged the ISRO chairman on the failed rover launch, etc., that's the kind of thing a leader needs to do. I mean, that kind of image goes down in memory. So emotional intelligence is very, very example. Leading by example, very important. Never ask your team to do something that you will not do yourself. I think the greatest example is Imran Khan. Imran Khan, regardless of what you may think of him as a politician, he was captain of the Pakistan cricket team, where they had people like, Wasim Akram, Waqar Yunus, Javed Miadad. I mean, some amazing players, Saeed Anwar, people. And those are the days when Pakistan used to thrash India practically in every match. And Imran Khan was not the best batsman. He was probably one of the best bowlers in the world, but the sheer leadership that he brought, his situational awareness, leading by example. He would never ask his team members to do something that he wouldn't do himself. Closer home, Virat Kohli, the fittest player in the Indian cricket team, perhaps one of the fittest players in the world. His dedication, his desire, his devotion. He says, if I can do it, and I'm not the youngest player anymore, but if I can do it, so can you. So leading by example, I think, is very, very important. Closer home. Yes.
Winding up in 2 minutes because people are wanting to ask questions.
Okay, great. So I'm also coming to the end of it in any case. One other example I want to give to you is what the Starbucks India CEO did. So in Bombay, he went and actually sat in the Starbucks stores and talked to customers. Of course, this is before they were shut down, during the initial days of the coronavirus. So he was sitting at the stores with his team members and helping. He was making the coffees, he was serving them, food, etc. I think that was a great example of leading by example. So those are some of the things I'd like to talk to you about. My boss Kavita tells me that we're running out of time. I'm happy to take questions. I could go on for another half an hour, but I'm happy to take questions at this stage. How do I look at the questions? I think there are some questions in the chat, Kavita.
I think they were all very appreciative points coming up. However, now it's open for asking questions. Please go ahead, everyone. Samar will answer.
Yeah, I'm reading.
Yeah, Shiva, you can ask your question.
Yeah, Samar, I mean, I don't have a question here. I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed this few minutes with you. I want to appreciate the flow that you had and the way quickly you are connecting with examples with every point. Fantastic. Thank you, Kavita, for looping me in this. And thank you, Samar, for this wonderful time. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. And thank
I have a small question, Kavita, if I may. Rajesh.
Sure, please. Yeah.
Samar, excellent. That was one of the best flows of training I've ever seen. And brilliant examples, more so because I'm also a cricket fan. I just wanted to ask you one question, Samar, is that given the economic situation, how much of a human face can leaders bring in? Because somewhere there has to be a balance between running a company and running the people.
That's a good question. It's also an existential crisis. There is a saying that if you look after, you don't need to look after your customers. You need to look after your employees. If you look after your employees, they will look after your customers. Currently, I work with Aditya Birla Retail. I work with Britannia. I work with Himalaya. We are working with Pepsi, Marico, etc. Everywhere I'm seeing, whether you're an essential product, non-essential product. These are the times, Rajesh, where your team is looking at you. Do I mean anything to my team? Do I mean anything to my boss? I will not take the name of the person. I was speaking to the CEO of a Titan Group company where they have decided that they will not pay bonuses to anyone today for the last year. And his view was that the coronavirus crisis happened in the middle of March. So for 11 and a half months, we have performed. It's only the last 15 days of March that we've not been able to perform. Are you going to take away our entire bonus for the whole year, where we've met our budgets for 11 and a half months for only half a month? Now, I won't tell you the name because a very well-known CEO, but I think, and it's unusual for that to happen in a Tata Group company because typically they're very empathetic. Rajesh, there are no easy answers. I think a lot of it is to do with the culture of the organization. But I promise you, the gap between good and great companies is exactly that. And let me give you UB's own example. Since you mentioned it, I used to be CMO of a company that had 15,000 crore top line. We had a revenue of 15,000 crores, and that too because the pricing is controlled by the government. If it were free pricing, we would be in a 35,000 crore revenue. Our salary bill is only 4% of revenue. Are you trying to tell me that the company cannot carry? And right now, the Alcobev business is shut. It's been shut for 1.5 months. Are you trying to tell me 15,000 crore top line, 4% salary and wages cost? You cannot carry that for 1.5 months. You cannot pay people full, forget 1.5 months. You can pay it for them for the next 5 years without it impacting. So if you look at larger companies, they don't have a problem. Yes, MSMEs, smaller companies have an issue. I have friends of mine, very tragically, they've run businesses for 20 years and they're shutting in 1 month because they simply don't have the margins. So I think showing a human face, Rajesh, is very important. You treat your employees well. I guarantee you they will treat your customers and your business will flourish. You may not see quick results, but in the long run, people will remember the way you made them feel. People will remember the way you treated them.
Thank you, Samar.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Harjot, you have a question. You can speak. Harjot had a question.
Harjot has written, I want to ask one question.
Where are you? Just
Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm sorry I couldn't turn on my video because I was not prepared for it.
That's all right. No problem.
Much. So my question is, I have listened to your presentation and you are giving me so many examples from all over the world. My question is, how would you rate the leadership taught by the likes of Robin Sharma or Jack Canfield or some of those personalities? Are you really think that these techniques and principles can be applied to the business environment?
Okay, see, I think a lot of it is cultural as well. You see, I do a lot of lecturing at MBA institutes. When we grew up, we were taught only American management. You're much younger than I am. You're fortunate to have learned Indian management case studies as well. In theory, so for instance, we learned about Radio Shack and Sears Roebuck, and I can see Surinder nodding vigorously. We learned about those American companies where the economy was opened up in 91 by Narasimha Rao. And when I go today, I see the curricula is full about stories about Reliance and, Birlas and Tatas, which is fantastic. I don't think, Harjot, you can translate literally everything, but there are certain truisms that work. You treat people well, by and large. See, you hire the right people. You remove obstacles from their path. You empower them. By and large, they will deliver. Of course, they will make mistakes. 10% of the time, they will make mistakes. I tell my people, make all the mistakes you want. Just don't repeat your mistakes. Learn from every mistake. So while you may not be able to translate what is in theory, verbatim, I think there's a lot of it that can be used. Human beings, trust me, Harjot, I have worked in the United States. I worked in Western Europe. I worked in Southeast Asia, the Middle East. Human beings, by and large, are the same. Yes, culturally, there are little different. Infrastructures are different. The quality of living in various aspects is different. But by and large, everyone has the same desires and motivations. So you treat people well, they will repay the faith more often than not.
Okay, Samar, I have a question. Can I go ahead?
No.
Yes, Lata, please.
Yes, Samar. There's always a saying that leaders are born, we cannot make them. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was wondering, I was actually going to use that in my response to Harjot. I was wondering when someone is going to ask that question. If you ask me personally, my personal view is leaders are born, not made. However, I do believe that there are certain things a person can do to become a better leader. So for instance, I was very, very blessed to have been thrown into, and very fortunate, as I was telling Kavita earlier, I think, and I'm sure Surinder feels the same way. There was someone who took a chance on us and hired us. Someone could have hired someone else, but he chose to hire us. And I got thrown into leadership positions literally from a very young age. I was the youngest area manager in the history of Cadbury's. At 24, I was handling 2 states, 3 factories, and I had 50-year-old people reporting to me. You need to grow up really fast. So I would credit my having played sports and really team sports as having helped in developing leadership. And Lata, one of the problems today is kids are not playing sports. They're
Yes.
not playing physical sports anymore. That doesn't teach them how to lose, because you will lose more often than you will win. You know, handling defeat, handling rejection, working with a team, harnessing the team's strengths and weaknesses. Every team person is not of the same level. Delegating, discipline, working towards a common goal. I think all those can be developed. I believe there are natural leaders. I think Mahendra Singh Dhoni is a natural leader. I think Narendra Modi is a natural leader. I think people like Saurav Ganguly was a natural leader. I think sports examples come easily to me. But let's say a great example, Sachin Tendulkar. Amazing player, fantastic player, really poor leader. Because of one problem. Number one, he's not very well educated formally. See, remember, leadership is all here as well. Formal education makes a big difference. This morning, I posted a Skype or a Facebook chat between Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer. Now, we may worship these guys, but they talk like children. Because, and that's a whole different topic. You see, to be the best, single-mindedly the best in whatever you want to be, you need to cut out everything else in your life. So those parts of your skill or part of your human experience that develop you as a human being, you cannot allow that to come into their lives. So the upshot is Sachin Tendulkar is one of the greatest batsmen that ever played the game. But he believes everyone else can automatically bat at the same level as me, which is never going to happen. And he was so obsessed with his own performance and his own record that he simply was not able to step away and understand that, other people need different kinds of guidance, which is why he was a great player, but a poor leader. Tiger Woods, great player. He's never been captain of America's team, So Michael Phelps, amazing swimmer, very poor leader. So, on the other hand, the best. So let me put it this way, Lata. I don't know what your background is, where you work. The greatest salesman in your company would probably be a disaster as a CEO. On the other hand, the CEO going in to make a sales call would probably be a disaster because the skill sets required are completely different. So my personal view is leaders are born, not made. But I also believe that you can definitely improve the quality of your leadership by working on it.
And in fact, questions. We're running out of time.
Yes, Kavita. Sorry. Any more questions?
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
One last question.
Hello. I'm Abhishek.
I think Abhishek Sengupta has a question.
Converted into a unity. Let's keep it.
Yes. Yeah. Hi. I'm Abhishek Sengupta.
For that.
Yes. Samaji, it was a great session. A lot of learning. But my question to you is: there is a cliched saying that a leader is as good as his team.
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
I completely agree. The greatest example is the Australian cricket team, the dominance of the Australian cricket team. They never had fantastic leaders. See, the greatest leaders Australia has ever had, and in no particular order, were Alan Border, Steve Waugh, Richie Benaud. Ricky Ponting didn't come close. I mean, he was very good, but Ricky Ponting's team was unbelievable. He had Glenn McGrath, he had Adam Gilchrist, he had Damien Martin, he had Justin Langer, he had Shane Warne, he had Jason Gillespie, he had Damien Fleming. It was an incredible world-beating team. He really literally needed to do nothing. He just needed to make sure that they perform to the best of their individual capacities. On the other hand, if the team is not so great and you have a fantastic leader, I gave the example of Rajasthan Royals with Shane Warne or Kapil Dev in the 1983 World Cup. So a team is definitely as good as its people. If you have an amazing team, all the leader needs to do is harness that kind of talent. Or the West Indies of the early 70s. I mean, Clive Lloyd was the captain. You had incredible talent there. They just needed to show up and they would defeat everyone. On the other hand, if your team is not so great, you need an extraordinary leader. So there are two, both work.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think, Kavita, I know we're out of time. There was Pankaj Oza, I think, had a question.
So I had a question too, if I'm allowed to ask.
Yeah, so Kavita is the boss, so you have to check with him.
So did I actually, but I think we are out of time.
Bhavani, you've taken one. We'll take another question from somebody else.
Sure.
There were 2-3 questions before. We'll just close with one more question because we are running out of time.
You
I'll
guys can
just-
connect. Listen, you guys can connect with me offline as well. Kavita has my coordinates. I'm more than happy to
So we'll
help you out.
answer all your
offline as well.
questions.
Yes, sir. So whose question am I taking, Kavita, now?
The last one, if you can go to the. No, where is Kavita? Just put out
Yeah,
the
there's
chat and say the
one.
last.
Yeah, there's one from Pankaj that says, "What should brands do during the lockdown to continue their communication with their customers?"
We
I think,
have
Pankaj,
2
if you're on
minutes
the
to
call,
close on this. And
yeah, if it's a very large, it's a very general question. Frankly, a lot of it depends on what kind of business you're involved in. So, for instance, if you're a food and grocery business, make sure that your brands are available. Work on supply chain disruptions. Make sure your retail outlets have as much of your stock as possible. On the other hand, if you're a jewelry business, then you have to pray. My submission is sometimes do nothing as well. So for instance, today, when an airline sends me a message, we are thinking about you today. Dude, when I had 2 kilos extra baggage, where were you then? Right? So they can call you out if you're fake as well. I think it depends on the kind of business that you're involved with. If you're a business that is relatively unaffected by the current crisis, stay in touch with your consumers. Don't fake it. Don't fake sympathy. They see you like this. And like I said a little earlier, talk to them if you have something meaningful to say.
Thank you, Samar, for a great mesmerizing session. I think many of them still want to ask many questions. We're running out of time. We'll share all the questions offline and answer them to you. Samar will be kind enough to answer. Great session. We thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. I think everybody would agree with me. Thank you for your time, your energy, which is really infectious, and for coming on our show.
Thank you, Kavita.
Thank you, Samar. Thank you, Kavita.
Thank you, Samar. Great
you.
examples.
Samar,
Thank you
great.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Awesome session.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Samar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.